Okay, welcome to our second conference. We are at the third session, and now we are starting our presentations. My name is Professor Dr. Özgür Ömer Ersin. I will be the chair for this meeting right now. So we are starting with our first presentation, which is trade policy uncertainty and how it causes important effects on emerging economies' exchange markets. So we have three authors, and please welcome our presenter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ojam. Thank you. So once again, my name is Godwin Olasehinde-Williams, and like Ojam has said, I'll be speaking on trade policy uncertainty in the US and the impacts on the emerging economies' exchange market pressure. Co-authors with me on this paper are Dr. Ifedolapo and Associate Professor Cihat Köksal. So I'll just go straight into the presentation. So I'll start with the motivation. Now, over the past 6, 7, 8 years, there has been an upsurge in two strands of literature. The first one deals with studies that focus on the macroeconomic effects of policy uncertainties. And all sorts of policy uncertainties have been studied. For example, economic policy uncertainty, fiscal policy uncertainty, monetary policy uncertainty, even climate policy uncertainty and trade policy uncertainty. And the impact of these policy uncertainties on key macroeconomic variables, GDP, interest rates, and so on, have been extensively studied. And the consensus, so to say, is that usually policy uncertainties have a negative impact on the economies of countries. And then the second strand of literature has to do with those that generally study the spillover effects of policy uncertainties across countries. So even spillover effects of uncertainties and even the related volatilities from one country to another. So in this study, our study is a hybrid of both. We are trying to say the macroeconomic effects of policy of a particular type of policy uncertainty across countries. So what are we interested in per se? We are interested in the USA. And we argue that the USA being a very influential economy in the world, anything that happens, especially policy uncertainties emanating from the US, has a strong tendency to spread over into other countries, especially emerging market economies that are strongly interconnected with the USA with regards to international trade. Most of these emerging economies, as parts of their development strategies, they have substantial trade relations with the US. So this makes them quite vulnerable to occurrences in the US. And why? So we are actually interested in a particular kind of policy uncertainty, which is trade policy uncertainty. So why are we interested in trade policy uncertainty? It is simply because over the past few years, trade policy uncertainty has been going really, relatively high in the United States. And if you really look closely at it, you'll see that the US has been engaged in trade wars with trade conflicts with many countries around the world, China, with Russia, even with Canada, with Saudi Arabia, and so many other countries. So it's an interesting time to study this kind of policy uncertainty, the trade policy uncertainty, specifically the USA's trade policy uncertainty and how it affects other countries. So the key objective of this study is just to explore the link between the US trade policy uncertainty and the exchange market pressure of large emerging markets that are dependent or interconnected with the United States. And then again, why are we interested in EMP, which is the exchange market pressure? In general, most studies on occurrences, on changes in the foreign exchange markets are focused on exchange rates. If we generally want to see things happening in the foreign exchange markets, we look at the exchange rates. However, the exchange rate does not fully capture all the occurrences in the foreign exchange market. This is because if a country, for instance, uses fixed exchange rates, even if anything happens in the foreign exchange market of such a country, it will not be noticeable in the exchange rates. But however, they will still need to use some form of monetary policy actions to defend the currency. For example, they might have to deplete their foreign reserves to protect the exchange rate from fluctuating. So this means that all in the exchange rates of a country, but we are still likely to see some changes in the foreign reserves. So this EMP is a holistic, it covers the entire movement in the foreign exchange market because it encompasses both changes in the foreign reserves as well as changes in the exchange rate. So it gives us a better understanding of what happens in the foreign exchange market. And as you can see here, exchange market pressure is just a combination of changes occurring in international reserves and changes in the exchange rate of the country. So it's superior to just using exchange rate in capturing movements in the foreign exchange market. And what's the theoretical intuition for our study? We theoretically assume that US trade policy uncertainty can cause changes in the exchange market pressure of connected countries because it can affect the global structure of economies. And it can do this both directly and indirectly. So the direct channel through which the trade policy uncertainty from the US can affect exchange market pressure of other connected countries, like the ones we are looking at, is the one I'll be starting with. So trade policy uncertainty can change the global structure of trade, and it can thus offset the currency exchange in trade, affect trade balance, affect international markets, and affect international capital flows in such a way that we might witness some pressure on the currency of a particular country that is connected to the US, and it can lead to fluctuations in the foreign exchange market. And then indirectly also, because exchange market pressure really is a combination of the external reserves and exchange rates. So, and these two things are directly determined by changes in the macroeconomic fundamentals of the country. So it means that the exchange market pressure is likely to be sensitive to international shocks. And of course, it means that when there is some external uncertainty, it is likely to respond to it. So for these reasons, we theoretically believe that there should be some connection between US trade policy uncertainty and the exchange market pressure of emerging markets. And for our case study, we have focused on the 10 leading emerging markets: Argentina, Brazil, China, India, Indonesia, with Mexico, Russia, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, and Turkey. And interestingly, these 10 countries are not just the 10 leading emerging markets. They are also countries that have been engaged in trade wars, trade conflicts with the United States in the recent years, especially during the previous administration of President Donald Trump. For example, the US imposed sanctions, tariff hikes on Argentina and Brazil a few years back. US has been in constant trade wars with China for so long in terms of accusations and counter-accusations, currency manipulations, and issues like that. Even recently, the US has been in conflict with India concerning the exports of agricultural products from India. Same with Mexico. We witnessed former President Donald Trump threatening to impose sanctions and tariffs on products from Mexico. And just last year, or even early this year, we witnessed the introduction of the cap on Russian oil in international trade. Likewise, Saudi Arabia had a spat with the United States recently with regards to cuts to OPEC oil production, which Saudi Arabia refused to do. And South Africa has also been shown to be one of the countries heavily affected by the US-China trade conflicts. Even Turkey recently, for example, in 2018, was engaged in a trade conflict with the United States with imposition of tariffs and how it eventually affected the Turkish lira and all of that. So most of these countries are actually countries that have engaged in trade conflicts with the US recently. And so for our analysis, we have used two key variables, one to measure trade policy uncertainty and the other to measure exchange market pressure. And the details about these variables can be found in this slide. I will not dwell so much on them. So for our analysis, the methodology we have followed is the general to specific estimation of VARs by Asali 2020. So this method, in addition to providing us with the conventional VAR statistics like Granger causality, cumulative impulse responses, it also produces the long-run steady-state effects. And in addition, there are also some key benefits to using this methodology. Usually VAR models are associated with the problem of over-parameterization. This methodology is designed to overcome that problem. And then it also offers diagnostics that can genuinely show that the causality results that we are interpreting are actually genuine, are actually reliable, and not just false results. So by using this methodology, we generated our results. I'll just summarize the first one so as not to waste time. GC means Granger causality. LR means long-run steady-state effects, and CIR means cumulative impulse responses. And the countries, the set of countries on this first slide are Argentina, Brazil, Russia, China, and India. The superscripts that you can find represent our significance. A means significance at 10%, B 5%, and C 1%.
Benim sıramdan önce
So,
kaç kişi var neyse. Bana anons edilecek değil mi?
is that a question for me? Hello?
No, you may continue.
Okay, fine. So I'll just go to the results now. So the summary of the results are provided now. So for the Granger causality results, after we have confirmed that the causality that we have detected are actually genuine using this methodology, then we found that trade policy uncertainty emanating from the United States actually Granger causes exchange market pressure in these countries. So virtually all the countries respond to trade policy uncertainty from the United States. And interestingly, only China has a feedback causality. So US trade policy uncertainty is not just a significant predictor of exchange market pressure in China, but the relationship is also reversed. We have a situation where exchange market pressure from China also Granger causes trade policy uncertainty. And this kind of shows how important China is in international trade these days. It means that even the United States gets affected, reacts when there is some form of pressure in the foreign exchange market that involves China. And then for the steady state results, for the long run effects, we found that US trade policy uncertainty has a positive long run steady state impact on exchange market pressure, Argentina, Brazil, China, Mexico, and Saudi Arabia. So in summary, this just shows that there is a long run positive effect, or rather that US trade policy uncertainty increases the exchange market pressure of countries that are in the region that US is, countries in the Americas. There are only 3 countries that we have sampled in the Americas, and they all have a long-run relationship with the US. Argentina, Brazil, and Mexico. And in addition to those two, China again, and then Saudi Arabia also are affected in the long run by US trade policy uncertainty. So, in conclusion, our study shows that there is a level of connection between US trade policy uncertainty and the exchange market pressure of these 10 leading large emerging economies. And therefore, the growth and development prospects of the countries are influenced by this form of externality. So what we are recommending are the following. Countries should look at policies for risk diversification so that they can guard against their overdependence on the US economy, so that they are not too vulnerable to these uncertainties emanating from the US. And then policies should also be put in place to cushion the impact of this uncertainty, since it has been identified that it's a problem that spills over into the economies. Then policies that can be used to minimize the negative effects of this uncertainty should be put in place. And then, like we observe in recent times, that countries, some emerging countries, such as BRICS countries, are already negotiating, developing their trade relations based on their own currencies rather than the US. Their countries are generally trying to withdraw from being overdependent on the US dollar. We think this is the way to go in the world, this kind of diversification that helps countries not to rely too heavily on the US economy and the US dollar is the way to go to prevent themselves from being exposed to the shocks, to the external shocks associated with the US trade policy uncertainty. And I thank you very much for listening, and I'm glad to take any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Godwin. It was a good presentation. Does anyone have any questions that who want to direct to Dr. Godwin about his findings and paper? Okay, can I ask a question?
Yes,
Dr. Yes. In your presentation, you mentioned that there are feedback effects from China, but you said this is the only feedback effect. How do you interpret that the recent Russian conflict has no implication or any feedback effect on the United States' trade policy uncertainty?
Ojam, because this is a very recent development, and data does not fully capture this particular period, so we may not have seen the impact. So this is there is an opportunity to extend the study as more data becomes available. So I'm sure that eventually happenings, especially with these Russo-Ukraine conflicts, will become very visible eventually.
Yes, it will be visible later in the data, right? Okay, thank you very much. We are continuing with our second presentation. Dr. Şahin Yaman is here. I welcome you to the stage with your presentation. You may share your presentation through the system. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm just trying to share my presentation.
Thank you. We are waiting for you. No problem.
Okay.
In the middle, there is a button called Ekran Paylaşımı, Şahin Hocam. If you can share it with that, it's okay. If you cannot, please let us know.
No, I'm sorry.
Can check from here.
I am okay. Is it okay now?
Yes, it is. It is visible now in the PDF format. Thank you.
But I cannot. Okay, I should
No,
make it.
not,
Is it okay? Yeah.
yes, it's okay. That's
Okay.
great.
I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Before maybe delving into the details of the presentation, I should like to first thanks to the chairman, Professor Ömer Torlak, and Professor Figen Yıldırım, Head of International Trade Department. My thanks also goes to Professor Sabri Öz and Şuheda Baran, who have made substantial contribution and technical aid to us before the conference. I also warmly welcome everybody into this significant event. My topic, Mr. Chairman, will be about the BRICS countries or BRICS grouping services trade policy, maybe a little bit vis-a-vis the advanced OECD economies. I will try to combine two critical topics I think do constitute an important analytical category. The first one is regional grouping, maybe platform, I should say more correctly, BRICS economies, namely Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The second one is the functional topic, namely services export or service trade policy. I will use a well-known, maybe basic theoretical framework explaining any countries or any international political units trade policy sector's effectiveness, which is developed by maybe HHR, Huang, Han and Roderick, Hausman and Roderick, which is known as PRODI and XP. Which shows, the first one shows the sectoral productivity level, basically. Second also shows the any country's its level of sophistication in export, whether it's goods or services. In the research, actually, I will try to focus upon via using the services trade policy effectiveness of the BRICS vis-a-vis OECD economies in terms of high value added modern services vis-a-vis all traditional low value added services. Recently, it is suggested that in a WTO UNCTAD joint research, BRICS is an important global player in global trade. Maybe before, approximately 20 or 23 years before, BRICS entered as an acronym into the trade policy discussions or economic growth discussion forum by Jim O'Neill from Goldman Sachs Investment Bank. He acronymized the BRICS as a forecast and emerging global player in the global economic growth. In my assessment, considering the current fragmentation in the global trading system, namely WTO, Doha development rounds, and the collapse of the dispute settlement system or appellate body, and rapidly proliferation of regional trade agreements, maybe mega regionals, and also maybe we are anxiously following the securitization of the global trade issues. I think the BRICS will be an important player or factor in all of these parameters in the maybe currently or in the near future. In fact, maybe we should start from the economic history. Maybe from the 19th century and on till the 70s, BRICS was, the services as a functional trade policy topics almost ignored until the 1970s. Basically, the services trade policy or services sector went into the analytical debates, maybe within the context of the multilateral trading system, namely GATT, General Agreements of Trade, Tariffs and Trade, during the maybe late 70s and 80s, early phases of the Uruguay round. Before that, both the Adam Smiths in the liberal tradition or the Marxist tradition, maybe with some exceptions, services was perceived as an unproductive labor and was not considered a significant research category. In the literature, it is frequently argued that the advances in information communication, telecommunication technologies, these non-tradable, once accepted as non-tradable sectors, now enter the scene of both trade policy and theoretical research. Currently, both in the WTO, UNCTAD, World Bank, or academic area, we have seen an increasing level of research on the services trade policy, although it is a bit difficult compared to the goods sector, because it lacks the theoretical framework, it lacks consistent empirical research. But services, in a recent WTO, World Trade Organization report, it was seen as the backbone of the global economy and the most dynamic component of international trade. And the servitization, which means that the services sector increasingly takes a larger share in the manufacturing, production, or export, has also become an important phenomenon. But in my research, I will not look at services or goods as a kind of normal economic activity, but I'll start to look at from a different angle. Not all goods and services are alike in terms of economic growth, it was argued. Specialization in some sectors, services sectors, bring higher dynamics or growth than specialization in other sectors. Again, starting from Boomel, who has seen the services as a whole as unproductive, to the Mishra and Globe, services was basically categorized into simple two categories, which was the first one was modern services, which were high value added services. And the second one, the traditional services, such as tourism, transport, construction, or cultural and recreational services. It is argued that the communication, financial, insurance, computer, telecom, or information services, or intellectual property rights royalties, or modern business consulting services, or other services have much more value added compared to the traditional services. In fact, when we look at the recent data, modern services or the high value added services have been increasing their share. I'll skip maybe the figures, but look at a few critical points. One critical developments, especially after the accession of China into the world trading system, maybe recent phase of the globalization, composition of the global services exports have also changed. Now, as I stated before, high value added services exports are growing more rapidly. The share of high value added services in total export more than doubled. And the modern services have been playing more critical and important role in the economic growth and development process. It is also argued that the services in general and the modern services in particular have been playing more crisis resilient role in stabilizing any economy facing economic crisis. Now I would like to go into the role of BRICS in this regard. Maybe we can look at first the share of BRICS in the global economy or role of the BRICS in the global economy, I look at the World Bank development indicators with the purchasing power parity terms. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, I also add Turkey, have already surpassed the United States, which was the largest part of global economy, especially at the same date that China entered into the global trading system, namely to the World Trade Organization. When we look at the services export of the BRICS countries and Turkey in general, it seems that India, India is a very well-known case, but still BRICS level of BRICS export in the global economy remain comparably low when we compare them with the other actors, namely maybe competitive actors such as the OECD or advanced economies and European Union. But it seems that India has been the most stable and the largest exporter in the BRICS economies. When we look at their performance, BRICS performance with reference to the other maybe regional groupings or acronym economies, I look at a small table comparing the increase from 2007 to 2021. I think as we see that the BRICS has increased its services export 141%, largely over the European Union, which was 67%, and OECD was 56%, almost 1/3 of the BRICS. And when we look at North America, United States, Mexico, or Canada, formerly NAFTA countries, again, these countries has demonstrated 58% increase, largely below the level of BRICS in the mentioned period. Even the APEC performance is behind. Actually, as I mentioned, maybe I'll skip, but I'll use two basic analytical framework to assess the performance of these groupings. One is PRODI, which shows the sectoral productivity level simply. The second one is the XP, which was constructed by using the revealed competitive advantage weighted by the per capita income of countries. When we look at the PRODIs, in fact, PRODI or productivity level of the services subsector, as we mentioned before, the high value added sectors has a larger productivity level. For example, the intellectual property, the productivity level in 2020 is $43,000 in my calculation, and the construction sector has $13,000, or transport $14,000. Another high value added sector, finance, has $32,000, or business consulting services maybe $18,000. This is just a graphic, maybe indicating the same phenomena. I'll conclude, Mr. Chairman. I know maybe I a little bit past my time. Maybe I can show you the level of sophistication with the BRICS in the left-hand sides, indicating India, Brazil, Russian Federation, and China from 2005 and 2020. Overall level of competitiveness, services competitiveness may be unfolded in the criteria of XP and other world average. BRICS seems to be higher than world average, but on the other hand, demonstrated a lower performance than the OECD or rich economies. Maybe we can more easily follow the phenomena here. As you see, the RCEP recently concluded competitive arrangements in the Far East region that includes China, ASEAN countries, but also South Korea, Japan, New Zealand, and Australia, which was, in terms of security, close countries to the United States, but went into the integration with China first time into the Asian system. This is important because it signifies the rise of China or rise of Asia or shifting center of gravity into the Far East. And ICEP seems to be performing better than BRICS and Turkey on average. And although EU and the United States, maybe Mexico and Canada or formerly NAFTA, performs again better than BRICS and RCEP, but it seems that with these trends, in the long term, the BRICS countries, maybe including the RCEP, China, and others, will catch up in the coming decade or decades in the services trade of the advanced OECD economies. But on the other hand, it is, I'm not certain whether they would be surpassing the advanced OECD economies or the European Union or the other, relatively more developed countries like Singapore and others in terms of export sophistication or level of productivity. But overall, already surpassing any single OECD economies. For example, China and Hong Kong together made $4 trillion export in 2021, comparing 1.7 from the United States, and the rapidly rising export of the ASEAN, Brazil, and growing export of Russia in terms of raw materials and others. It seems that BRICS demonstrating a dynamic export and surpassed US and other advanced economies, currently maybe lag behind, but gradually increasing their exports and export sophistication in the services sector. Together with goods and services, it seems that in the coming decade, BRICS will be a significant and critical and maybe most important global trade player, including services in the multilateral trade governments. I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I conclude here.
We thank you, dear Şahin Yaman Hocam. Is there any questions who would like to direct to Mr. Şahin Yaman about his presentation? Thank you, Dr. Şahin Yaman. I see that there's no questions. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
We are continuing with Ezgi Avcı. She will be presenting generative AI in e-commerce, a conceptual framework. We welcome you with your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Özgür Hocam. So I'll share my screen. Ben şu anda bir saniye. Niye görmüyor diye bakıyorum da.
May you have any difficulties with sharing your screen? You may directly try to email me the file or share it through the chat that we might be able to present it, share it through our computer, our system.
Okay, maybe let's do that. Okay. Since I think since I have 3 screens, I have difficulty. Okay, here. I cannot send it from chat, but I will send it from maybe.
You may try to mail me directly or through WhatsApp. That might be helpful and pretty much straightforward than emailing. So during this process, may we continue with the next presenter, Professor?
Yes, if it is okay with Ezgi Avcı, we can solve the presentation at that time. Can we continue with Dr. Usman, please? Cihat, Köksal, Dr. Usman, and George Ike, they have the following presentation on oil price movements. I welcome them if they are ready, make their presentation.
Yeah. Good afternoon,
Thank
everyone.
you. Good afternoon, welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here. So I'm here to present the paper, Oil Price Movements and Agricultural Production from Heterogeneous Subsectors, Analyzing the Dutch Disease in Africa's Resource-Rich Economy. So first of all, we'll start with the introduction. Now, the Nigerian economy has had a high dependence on crude oil sales since the 1970s, when oil was discovered in commercial quantities. And this has been responsible for much of the Nigerian foreign exchange revenue. And because of this, we've had some macroeconomic problems arising from this situation. Now, since oil was discovered in the 1970s, it has taken the center stage as the main source of oil revenue of foreign exchange, both to the government and both for government revenues and for foreign exchange revenue. So because of this, there has been a gross neglect of the agricultural sector, which used to be the mainstay of the Nigerian economies prior to the discovery of crude oil in commercial quantities. So going forward, we see that oil price volatility has been one of the problems facing most oil-dependent economies, especially countries like Nigeria. So because of the volatility in oil price movements, you tend to see that it's very difficult for government to plan and execute certain long-term policy frameworks that they have developed, because most of the budget is dependent on the price and revenue coming from crude oil. So this all goes into the resource cost literature, and in the past there has been studies about how the countries that are rich in natural resources tend to have a hard time maintaining a steady state level of economic growth. And the resource cost has both economic and institutional implications, but the main area of our study today would be the economic implications of the resource cost, which is also known as the Dutch disease. It's called the Dutch disease because it was initially discovered in the Netherlands, and the Netherlands have a strong Norway, and because of the strong dependence on crude oil in that Scandinavian country. So, the primary objective of the present study is to determine empirically the effect of oil price fluctuations on agricultural production in the Nigerian economy between the 1970s and 2019 period. Now, before we begin, we first of all, this constitutes one of the major points of novelty in this research, we segregated the agricultural sector into the food production and livestock production subsectors. So we also employ unit truth tests, which accounts for structural breaks, because oil prices exhibit large swings, large volatile swings. So it's very important to account for structural breaks in the empirical estimation so as not to get any spurious estimation results. And we also employ co-integration tests, which also account for structural breaks, multiple structural breaks in this instance. And in order to check for robustness in the estimation, we try to employ the dynamic ARDL simulations of Jordan and Phillips to give a clear graphical depiction of the dynamic relationships of the variables. So in the literature, there has been studies about basically about oil price and economic output, and we've seen in past literature how oil price has affected various macroeconomic variables in different countries. And we tend to see in the literature that the effect of oil prices on macroeconomic variables is quite different depending on if the country is a net oil exporting country or a net oil importing country, as the case may be. And we also have seen papers which are tailored towards analyzing the Dutch disease effects. Now, the Dutch disease effects, it talks about how other sectors of the economy tend to begin to contract as the oil sector in that economy begins to boom. So what happens is that we have what we call the spending effect and the resource movement effect. So the resource movement effect occurs when when an inflow of oil revenue causes labor and capital from other sectors of the economy to flow towards the oil sector. So we also, under the resource movement effect, we have what we call the direct industrialization and the indirect deindustrialization. So during the indirect deindustrialization, we see a situation whereby oil revenue causes employment to flow directly towards the oil sector. Now, under the indirect deindustrialization, we have a situation whereby oil revenue spending on the service sectors causes employment to flow from other manufacturing sectors or other industrial sectors to the service sector that is benefiting from spending from the oil sector. Now, in previous studies, we tend to see that, especially studies tailored towards Nigeria, we tend to see that oil price fluctuations in the Nigerian economy mostly impact macroeconomic variables like the exchange rate, employment, and but not necessarily the gross domestic product. Other sectors of the economy like exchange rates and employment, with the consequences that come with that, such as the contraction of other tradable sectors of the economy. So we go straight to the model. Now, this represents the model. this is trying to model the ARDL model we use in the empirical estimation. We try to model the long and short run relationship between agricultural production and other covariates we deem necessary to include in the model. So we see the API in the model indicates agricultural production index, while GDPK indicates GDP per capita, and oil, which is represented as oil, then interest rates, then foreign direct investments, were other covariates we used in the model. So we also controlled for the effects of the multiple structural BRICS, which we captured from the Markey cointegration that we used to estimate the cointegration. So we included the significant BRICS in the model, and we left only BRICS that had a certain level of statistical significance. So this is our empirical results. You can see the coefficients we have for both the LPI model and the FPI model. The LPI model is the livestock production index when agricultural production is livestock production, and the FPI model is the food production index. So what we can see from the estimation is that we see a situation whereby oil prices has a positive relationship with livestock production, but has a negative relationship with food production. So you can see the importance of segregating the agricultural sector into two different subsectors because of the differences in the nature of the difference between these two sectors. And this positive relationship between the livestock production indicates a spending effect, as based on what we can see right now. So it indicates a spending effect, while the negative relationship between oil price and food production indicates a resource movement effect, because as oil prices are increasing, the food production sector is contracting. So this indicates a resource movement effect, because as oil revenues is flowing into the country, we see a situation whereby resources, employment, labor and capital is being moved from the food production sector to the more lucrative oil sector or the service sector, which enjoys the spending benefits from the oil sector. So we also see the structural BRICS are quite significant, and some of these structural BRICS they occur in different periods in the Nigerian economy where we witnessed oil price shocks, as the case may be. So, to conclude, we see that in the long run, oil price booms affect the agricultural sector, the food production sector and the livestock sector in different ways. An increase in the oil price undercuts the competitive performance of the food sector, as we can see from the empirical results. Although we did not actually include everything in this particular slide, we also did some Granger causality tests, and we saw that the spending effect we captured from the livestock production model was actually endogenous. It was actually endogenous to livestock production, because the Granger causality showed that livestock production was actually having predictive content for oil price movement, and we explained it because we saw that the livestock production imports from other countries have very strong linkages to the rest of the world. So these linkages allows a situation whereby when there are movements in livestock production, it means that there is a substitution between livestock production and oil-intensive production. And this allows you to know that, okay, as livestock production is growing, it means that oil prices may tend to increase in future. So the policy recommendations follows. In order to protect domestic agricultural production levels, we have to sterilize oil revenues abroad. That is, the excess revenues coming from oil has to be kept abroad or to be saved abroad, so that in order to protect the domestic manufacturing, industrial, and agricultural sectors of the economy from the resource movement effect. And it's also important that the financial sector improvises ways and means in which foreign investment can be channeled towards the agricultural sector. And this can be done by the government improving on the foreign policies and improving on the monetary policy rates for investment in agricultural sectors, and giving tax breaks to foreign investments that is targeted towards the agricultural sector. So, okay, this continues. Okay, it's important to introduce monetary policy programs that will introduce competitive interest rates for foreign investors in the agricultural sector of the Nigerian economy. So that is my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
Dear Dr. George Ike, thank you very much for your presentation.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome. It was a great presentation. Is there any questions who would like to direct to Dr. George Ike about his presentation? Okay, I see that there is not. Thank you very much. I welcome Dr. Ezgi now, Ezgi Avcı. She had an issue with. Are you able to present your PowerPoint slides to us? Is it okay now?
Yeah, actually, I send it to Berkin. Berkin will share it.
Okay. Berkin, please share it.
Screen I shared, Professor?
No, we are saying Professor George's screen now. Okay, yeah, it came. Okay, it is here now.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'll present today generative AI in e-commerce, a conceptual framework. Yes, next slide, please. Okay. First, I will mention about the background on e-commerce and its importance. In recent years, e-commerce has revolutionized the way business operates and customers shop. With the rapid growth of the internet and advancement in technology, e-commerce has become an essential part of the global economy. And according to Statistica, global e-commerce sales are projected to reach 6.3 trillion by 2024, highlighting the importance of this industry for business and consumers. And the role of artificial intelligence has emerged as a powerful tool for enhancing e-commerce operations and customer experiences. As you all know, generative AI is also very popular for the last 6 and 7 months. It has the potential to revolutionize e-commerce by automating various tasks, generating creative content, and providing personalized experiences for customers. Examples of generative AI models include generative adversarial networks, variational autoencoders, and transform-based language models like ChatGPT 3, 4, etc. These models can be used for tasks such as generating product designs, creating unique marketing materials, and offering tailored customer support. Next slide, please. There are different types of generative AI models. These are the most popular ones: generative adversarial networks, variational autoencoders, and transformer-based language models. I won't go into the details of these models because that's the part, most of the academic part. And their key benefits and challenges of these generative AI models. It offers numerous benefits like automating content creation, enabling personalization, and accelerating innovation. However, they also poses challenges, including high computational requirements, ethical concerns related to content generation, and ensuring the reliability of the generated content. Next slide, please. And conceptual background, the first one is the product design. We can, actually, these are the applications of generative AI in e-commerce. The first sector is product design and customization. For example, you can use generative AI in generating new product ideas and designs. For instance, generative AI can be used to develop new clothing designs by analyzing current fashion trends and customer preferences and historical sales data. By synthesizing this information, the AI model can generate novel design ideas that are both trendy and cater to the target audience. Designers can use these AI-generated concepts as inspiration, refining and iterating on them to create final products that are both aesthetically appealing and commercially viable. And the second one is personalizing products for individual customers. Actually, it's generative AI's ability to personalize products for individual customers become increasingly competitive. Generative AI can help businesses achieve this by creating customized product offerings tailored to the individual customer preferences. For example, generative AI can be used to personalize shoe designs for individual customers by analyzing their purchase history, browsing behavior, and feedback. And another major area is content creation and marketing. The first one is generating product description and reviews. For example, generative AI models such as ChatGPT 3 and 4 also now can be trained on a large data set of existing product descriptions and reviews, allowing them, that's the large language model, to generate new content that's both engaging and informative. By using NLP techniques, these AI models can understand the context and nuances of language, ensuring that the generated content is coherent and relevant to the product being described. And the second area is creating personalized marketing materials and campaigns. For example, generative AI can be used to create customized email marketing campaigns that include personalized product recommendations, promotional offers, and tailored messaging based on customers' preferences and past interactions with the brand. And another area is customer support and engagement. The first example is using NLP. Generative AI models can be trained on large data sets of customer support interactions, enabling them to comprehend the context and intent of customer inquiries. And another area is proactive customer communication and engagement. For example, generative AI can be used to send personalized product recommendations to customers based on their browsing history and preferences, and then encouraging them to explore new products that align with their interests. And the last area, last but not least area, inventory supply chain management. The first one is predicting and optimizing inventory levels. Generative AI can be used to predict and optimize inventory levels, ensuring that businesses have the right amount of stock at the time. And the second one is enhancing supply chain efficiency through generative AI-driven insights. Generative AI can also be used to enhance supply chain efficiency by providing valuable insights that help businesses optimize their operations. Yes, next slide, please. Yes, here we offer a conceptual framework for implementing generative AI in e-commerce. The first step is identifying use cases and objectives. It's crucial for businesses to identify specific use cases, customer needs, market trends, business can determine the areas where generative AI can be most effective and also feasible. Common use cases include content generation, product recommendation, customer support automation, and personalization. Once use cases are identified, businesses should set clear objectives and define success metrics to measure the impact of generative AI implementations. And the second step is data collection, processing, and management. We can use also generative AI to access accurate, diverse, and representative data. And this involves gathering relevant data, actual big data, from various sources, automation of cleaning and pre-processing of data, and make it more structured for easy access and analysis. And the third step is with the right data in place, generative AI models like the ones listed above in the presentation, and choosing the one that best aligns with the business objectives. And then integrate, this is the most difficult part and is here, integrating the generative AI into existing e-commerce systems. After developing and optimizing the generative AI models, businesses must integrate them into their existing e-commerce systems or create new applications that leverage the generative AI capabilities. This involves incorporating the models into the existing technology stack, ensuring seamless interaction with other components of the e-commerce system, and addressing any potential compatibility issues. And the other step is monitoring performance and updating the models. This is for optimizing the models for best result and ensuring ethical and responsible AI usage. As you all know, the ethical issues is very important for the AI, especially generative AI issues. The integration of generative AI into e-commerce operations raises various ethical and social concerns, such as data privacy, content authenticity, and their potential misuse. And business must be proactive in addressing these concerns by adhering to relevant regulations and guidelines and establishing the best practices for responsible AI usage. Next slide, please. I think we can pass this slide because it's the time for this. Yes, this slide. Future trends and opportunities. The first one is the evolving landscape of generative AI models. These with improvements in the generative AI models lead to more powerful and efficient algorithms that can generate higher quality content, predictions, and insights. And the second opportunity is the increased integration with emerging technologies. Generative AI technologies will likely be increasingly integrated with other emerging technologies such as VR, augmented reality, and Internet of Things. This convergence will create new opportunities for e-commerce businesses to deliver interactive and personalized experiences for their customers. Democratization of AI. This trend will enable businesses of all sizes to harness the power of generative AI, fostering innovation and leveling the playing field in the competitive e-commerce market. And exploring new applications and use cases. The first one is generative AI applications in emerging e-commerce niches. Like we can give an example like virtual reality shopping, voice commerce, or augmented reality product visualization. And the second one is leveraging generative AI for cross-domain applications, such as generating designs or marketing materials that incorporate elements from multiple domains, like from fashion and music, fashion and art, and from, for example, music and art, etc. This enables businesses to create innovative and engaging experiences that resonate with diverse customer interests. And addressing ethical and social implications. The first one is developing methods for detecting and preventing AI-generated content misuse. Future research can focus on developing methods for preventing such misuse and ensuring the responsible and ethical use of generative AI in e-commerce, and investigating the social implications of widespread generative AI adoption. This can help business and policymakers develop strategies to mitigate potential negative consequences of generative AI technologies. And the last one is emphasizing the importance of human AI collaboration in e-commerce. While generative AI presents lots of opportunities, it's essentially recognize the importance of human AI collaboration by fostering a culture of collaboration and understanding the strengths and limitations of both humans and AI. Businesses can harness the best of both worlds, ensuring the continued success and evolution of the e-commerce industry. So the last one is shifts in the workforce. Also, businesses will need to adapt their workforce strategies, focusing on upskilling employees and fostering a culture of continuous learning and innovation. By this, the e-commerce may lead to shifts in the workforce with increased demand for AI expertise, especially the prompt engineering expertise in the e-commerce workforce qualifications. So next slide, please. Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much for your presentation, Dr. Ezgi Avcı. If anyone want to direct questions to her, please proceed. Okay, I see that there is no questions. Thank you very much for your presentation. Now we are continuing with Sununu Ibrahim with their presentation on electrical vehicles industry in emerging countries. We welcome you. Please proceed and share your slide. Thank you. Dear Sununu, we cannot hear your voice.
I believe it's a technicality.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you guys for joining here, and I'm going to share my screen now. Okay. I'm here to talk about the new industry, which is the electric vehicle industry in emerging countries, the barriers and environmental opportunities, prepared by I and my fellow friends. This will be my outline. I'm going to talk about. Is my screen visible to everyone?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to talk about the general overview of the study, the rationale of our study, and just do a little bit of discussion of the barriers of the electric vehicles in emerging economies and the environmental opportunities it can portray to the environment, in global environment. So this article discusses how the electric vehicle industry can contribute to environmental preservation. We all know the global leaders right now, one of their major tasks is to combat or mitigate CO2, which is carbon dioxide emission into the world, which we already know global warming is already a problem also. So every country, every economy is finding different ways to mitigate this environment. One of these solutions is the creation of electric vehicles, which is less emittent, and it doesn't pollute the environment. As we all know, carbon dioxide, which is CO2, accounts for 58% of greenhouse gases, which is also part of nitrogen oxide, hydrofluoric carbons, and perfluorocarbons also. So what does this electric environment industry offers? It offers notable solutions to this procedure, either for environmental concerns or decreasing demand on fossil fuels. Why should we choose electric vehicles? Because they are quieter, they don't require gasoline, and which is made from crude oil and don't produce harmful emissions to the environment. Advanced economies like Norway, Iceland, and the Netherlands or Sweden have the greatest share in this the EV market, which is production of electric vehicles, while emerging economies like India, Brazil, and China are also major participants in the market. Despite the share is not equal, but both sides are trying their best to fight this war. So I'm going to use a popular theory to try and explain how does an electric vehicle will try and help mitigate the emissions in the environment, which is the environmental curve. It suggests that environmental degradation initially increases with economic growth, but then decreases after a certain level of income has been reached. So we all know the majority of these countries that have reached that certain level are the advanced economies. That's why they are ahead in the race in trying to combat CO2 emissions. But not far from these countries are also some emerging countries which are doing better in combating environmental degradation. For example, despite China's share of pollution in global emission, they're also doing their best to provide cleaner production ways. So our research suggests that the increase in the adoption of electric vehicles in emerging economies, which is countries like China, India, Turkey, including registration, custom fees, and electricity prices, which can be a barrier, especially installing new charging stations because of lack of infrastructure, proper infrastructure, cleaner infrastructure, and exempting electric vehicles from traffic restrictions. Also, this is like an opportunity for countries that uses electric vehicles. They should have, let's say, better let's say a preference on the road. If you're on the road, you should have your own lane. I think this will make people switch to electric vehicles. So that is one of our research, trying to discuss the barriers and at the same time trying to discuss the environmental opportunities this market has in the global economy. So the rationale behind the study is using the environmental curve, like I've said. The EV in automobile industry has shown a significant impact on mitigating CO2 and greenhouse, especially if the production and manufacturing of the electric vehicles and battery is based on renewable energy. I think this is very important because trying to assemble a car it includes lots of different manufacturing procedures. For example, making the tires, making the cover, the bonnet, the batteries. It incorporates a whole lot of industry which also take part in polluting the environment. So if countries or companies can find ways to use renewable energy or renewable resources to provide to manufacture the car also, I think it can play a better part in mitigating the CO2 pollution in the environment. I'm just going to move on to the next slide. So at a glance here, what the EKC is about. So a little bit of since electric vehicles do not emit pollutants from their tailpipe, which is the exhaust, they can significantly reduce local air pollution in emerging economies. For example, electric vehicles are adopted for petrol-based fuels, which can decrease and reduce the negative impact associated with extracting, refining, and transporting fossil fuels. For example, let's take Turkey, for example. Have they reached this turning point? I can say yes in certain part, I can say no in certain part. If we think of the air pollution, because there are different kinds of air pollutions, we have land, we have sea, we have water, we have air. So In terms of air, we can say Turkey has not reached that side, but in terms of water pollution, Turkey may have already reached this turning point on the EKC, because we know the country has made significant progress in reducing water pollution through improvement of wastewater treatment and the implementation of stricter regulation. But the major concern globally is air pollution. So I think it's going to be a little bit difficult trying to mitigate this factor. So how the production of electronic vehicles has environmental consequences, like I said before, particularly in relation to battery production, which is the important component of the electric vehicles. They should use renewable batteries like lithium batteries, or sourcing of raw materials of producing those lithium batteries also should be renewable. Studies like this also have asserted for this kind of initiative. And according to this study also, the adoption of electronic vehicles in emerging economies, such as India's goals of 100% electric mobility by 2030. We all know India is one of the most polluted country in the world. They also have a high share of global emission. But if they can achieve this, I think it will play a significant role in reducing pollution globally. At a glance, I'm going to show you Turkey's energy production and consumption, because when we consume a lot of energy in Turkey here, which is not clean energy, I can say. For example, historical data suggests that energy production from 1990 have rose by 78.25%, and then we can see the total CO2 emission of this country, which is 184.72%. We can see the significant rise. So in order for Turkey to try and mitigate this CO2 emission, they can turn to electric vehicle production. So what are the barriers? Barriers of this initiative: lack of charging networks. For example, we all know infrastructurally Turkey is not that good, but at the same time, we cannot say it's bad. But this can pose a challenging initiative if there are not enough or adequate charging stations for this kind of vehicles. Congestions and pollutions also. For example, we know Istanbul, how populated it is. Combining different transport policy instruments, for example, giving rights of favoritism to people who use electric cars, might sway people to adopt this kind of vehicles, because we cannot do without traveling or moving from point A to B. But if trying to take the lesser evil of it in trying to combat the global emission, I think it's something worth considering. For example, recently there has been a development in the industry in Turkey, the creation of the TOG automobile, which has seen a good demand. But prior to that, there have been sale of electric vehicles in Turkey, and we can see there has been a rise since 2015, in 2018, and 2020. Almost 17,749 electric cars has been used in the country. This might not be a significant figure, but partaking to the situation in the country and the kind of the share of global pollution Turkey has in the world, I think this is a significant increase also. So in the near future, Turkey can follow in this path. The environmental opportunities. Electronic vehicles or electric vehicles can reduce emission by replacing the vehicles that run on fossil fuels, like I've mentioned before. And the lack of dominant players in the region creates a greater chance for Turkish producers in the market. Also, this can be both sides for production and consumption. People who are producing these vehicles also can benefit growth-wise. At the same time, mitigation happens like the EKC has suggested. And recommendation, if electricity used to charge the electronic vehicles is generated from renewable sources, such as wind or solar power, then the emission associated with the electricity generation will be reduced. For example, this is also one challenge for electronic vehicles, the charging part. So it all goes back to the source of power. You understand where everything is coming from, where it's originating. If we can change the usage from non-renewable to renewable, I think this initiative is viable. But until we fix that, it can mitigate, but at a less impact. That's all for now, and I'm ready for any questions you have for me.
Dear Sununu, thank you very much for your presentation. Is there any questions? Thank you. I see that there are no questions. I am closing this session now, and we will continue with the next session that will start in 2 minutes in the other meeting room. Thank you very much. I welcome and thank everybody who contributed to this session. Take care of yourselves.
Thank you.